Hello, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tech Tuesday after a little bit of a break last week. But the week before that, I started a new series talking about carbohydrates and trying to figure out, are they the good guys or are they the bad guys? If you ask any of the comrades runners from this past weekend, they will tell you carbohydrates is what got them through, specifically the guys that finished, which apparently was a little over 91% of the field, which was pretty good, all things considered. And they would have been needing quite a bit of carbohydrates to get them through. But do you and I, who know that there was a wheel that was invented, and we don't need to run that sort of distance, need that amount of carbohydrates? Probably not. But let me share my screen and we will figure it out. Use a few of these things. Okay. So we're talking about carbohydrates, otherwise known as carbs. What are they? And are they good or bad? So the last time we went through, pardon me, we went through a bit of the are they good or bad, and we discovered that they're not all bad. They're not all good either, but there's a variety. And we're going to start on this week. And that is, what is a zero carb diet and what foods can you eat if you're not eating carbohydrates? And this is taken from an article written by a medical scientist who's Lizzie Straight. And I've just borrowed her information, and the link is over here. If you're needing the link to see the original information, I will happily share that with whoever asks. So a no-carb diet, last time we spoke about a low-carb diet, and Prof. Tim Noakes will always talk about a low-carb, high-protein or high-fat diet that he says is very good for diabetics. And this time we're going to talk about a no-carb. So a no-carb diet may provide certain benefits, including lowering of blood pressure. So if your blood pressure is extremely high and they can't really get it down any other way, maybe having a diet with no carbohydrates in it for a while could be beneficial. But this diet can also cause side effects and may be very difficult to sustain. As I've said before, pretty much any diet works. The question is that diet sustainable? Because in order for a diet to work, it has to be sustainable, not just for the 3 weeks that you need to lose 110 pounds or 46 kilos, which just, by the way, is very, very dangerous, but it needs to be a consistent decrease or sustainable diet where you can follow that diet every day for months or years in order to maintain your health. So a zero carb diet eliminates almost all carbs, including whole grains, fruits, and vegetables. So you might ask, what is left? While studies show that decreasing your carb intake can help you shed kilograms and may have health benefits, completely eliminating carbs is highly restrictive and most likely completely unnecessary. Carbs are your body's primary source of energy. They're found in grains, beans, legumes, fruits, vegetables, milk, yogurt, pasta, bread, and baked goods. So, if they say low carb, it's not saying getting rid of all of this. It's just keeping it to a minimum. Like with anything, too much of anything can be bad for you. Too much water can be bad for you. Too much oxygen can be bad for you. And as the toxicologist will always tell you, the poison is in the dose. So as a result, someone on a no-carb diet must avoid most of these foods and instead eat foods that contain primarily protein or fat, such as meats, fish, eggs, cheese, oils, and butter. So a vegan probably would not survive on a zero carb diet. A vegetarian might, but they'd have a lot of restrictions. So one's got to be very careful before prescribing this. And I would certainly not prescribe this myself, but should you have a medical condition and under consultation with your physician and your dietitian, you could probably do a zero carb diet for a period of time. Some people who follow it eat nuts and seeds, non-starchy vegetables, and high-fat fruits like avocado and coconut. So how do you follow this diet? Simply put, when you follow a no-carb diet, you avoid all high-carb foods. Remember, pretty much all food has got carbohydrates. It's just some are simple, some are complex. Specifically, you need to try to eliminate whole and refined grains, baked goods, fruits, milk, yogurt, beans, legumes, pasta, bread, sugar-sweetened beverages, and to check that, you've got to read the labels, and starchy vegetables like peas and corn, because starch is carbohydrates. Food and drinks allowed on a no-carb diet include meat, fish, eggs, cheese, butter, oils, water, and plain coffee or tea. In other words, no sweeteners added. And also no milk for that matter. So if you're less stringent, you can also eat nuts, seeds, non-starchy vegetables, and high-fat fruits like avo and coconut, since these foods are low in net carbs. Since this diet focuses on restricting a specific macronutrient, there are no recommendations for daily calorie intake or portion sizes. So, in other words, knock yourself out. You can eat as much as you want until you feel full. Now, can you lose weight by not eating carbs? Because generally, carbs are considered the bad guy that causes the weight gain. And it's not always the bad guy. So in general, reducing your carb intake can help you lose weight. But replacing the carbs with primarily more protein, as well as fiber and fat, may make you feel fuller and eat fewer overall calories, which in turn promotes weight loss. So this is where Tim Noakes comes about with his diet, where he says low carb, high protein, which is very good for diabetics. So the research is still mixed on whether reducing your carb intake is better for weight loss and health or not. Some studies have suggested this to be the case in the first 6 months, but not as much in the long term. So in other words, if you follow this diet for about 6 months, yes, you're going to see results, but the jury's still out on if you continue to follow this diet for 12, 18, 36 months. Is it going to have the same effect? Pardon me. Therefore, you likely don't need to completely eliminate carbs to achieve weight loss. So my personal suggestion, please understand, I am not a practicing physician, I am not a dietitian or even a clinical nutritionist, but you probably would like to lower your carb rate. Once you've hit your weight plateau that you want, your target weight, then you need to readjust your diet and see what it is you're eating. Keep your simple carbs to a minimum. Enjoy the more complex carbohydrates because those are the ones that burn off more slowly and keep you feeling fuller for longer. So gradually reducing your carb intake and more importantly, decreasing your overall calorie intake are less restrictive ways to lose weight. Like with anything, don't be in a hurry. You didn't put on the weight overnight. It's not going to disappear overnight either. So if it took you 5 years to put on the weight and you suddenly wake up one morning and realize that you are 40 or 50 kilos heavier than what you should be, don't expect to lose it all in the next 2 weeks because you probably will lose it all in the next 2 weeks and be dead. So don't want to lose weight that fast. It builds up slowly, try and reduce it slowly, but if you're following the correct guidelines, it'll actually go a lot faster than you realize. But don't try and lose too much weight in a very short period of time. Very low carb diets typically promote rapid weight loss in the first few weeks. So this would be a case in, if you ever looked at the Guinness Book of Records and you see who weighs in at the heaviest person in the world, I think that record was in the region of about 450 odd kilograms. That is a significant weight. And they could quite easily lose 40 or 50 kilos over a comparatively short period of time. But if you are only, say, 5 or 10 kilos overweight, you don't want to lose 5 or 10 kilos in 1 week. You will cause yourself harm. Rather do it over a period of a few months than a few weeks. As I said, 450 kilos, yes. Body's not going to miss those 30, 40 kilos that you can lose in a few weeks. But it will if you're a lower weight to start with. However, this is usually due, so the rapid weight loss is usually due to a quick drop in water weight, because every gram of carbs holds approximately 3 grams of water in your body. So if you feel that you are retaining water, look at your carbohydrate intake. Could be something to look at, to be aware of. So what are the other benefits of a no-carb diet? No studies exist on diets that completely eliminate carbs, but research on very low-carb and ketogenic diets suggests that they may have several benefits. First one is cardiovascular health. Decreasing your carb intake may improve heart health. Very low-carb diets have been shown to decrease blood triglyceride levels, which can increase your chance of heart disease. Even so, more research is needed. Now, sadly, because diets and nutrition are not a high money-making market, and research costs large amounts of money, there aren't that many research periods that are done. So research is a bit sketchy compared to drug or medicine research. So just be aware that it's not that no research is being done, but research is an expensive pastime. And because you can't patent food, there's not a lot of money available to go into the research to see, what does this food do? What does that food do? If we reduce the carbs, how are we going to, is it worthwhile? Is it beneficial for you? Is it not? So they need to do a lot more research. And unfortunately, a lot of these research time periods are also cover a very long period of time, meaning not just a couple of months, but we're talking a couple of decades, sometimes an entire lifetime. So that research is very slow, as opposed to drug research, which is done over a period of months, and you can see the results pretty quickly. So your blood glucose levels, cutting carbs, particularly refined carbs and sugar, these are the ones that are the biggest culprits, can aid your blood sugar control, which may be especially helpful for people with diabetes. Your blood pressure, which is the other big killer. Some studies suggest reducing carb intake can help to lower your blood pressure. A reduction of belly fat. There's limited research that indicates that very low carb diets are better than low fat diets at decreasing belly fat, which is a type of fat associated with inflammation and certain diseases. Remember, anytime that there's an imbalance in the body, you're going to have inflammation. So you want to reduce that inflammation, and there are certain things diet-related that can reduce that inflammation naturally, as opposed to taking an anti-inflammatory tablet, for instance, like you would use for an injury, because there's inflammation there and they want to bring that inflammation down quickly. So they prescribe an anti-inflammatory. Now, you can't do that for things like belly fat. Metabolic syndrome is the other thing. Decreasing your carb intake is linked with a lower chance of metabolic syndrome, which is a group of risk factors that increase the likelihood of developing heart disease, diabetes, and stroke. So your metabolic syndrome is a combination of all of these things. What is your heart doing? What is your sugar levels doing? And what is your circulation doing, which affects, which can be the cause of a stroke? So what are the downsides of a no-carb diet? And one of those downsides is that you develop constipation. Since a no-carb diet restricts your fruits, most vegetables, beans, and whole grains, it can be very low in fiber, which helps digestion by helping maintain bowel regularity. Because of this, a no-carb diet may lead to constipation. So, yeah, if somebody's suffering from chronic constipation, check and see what's in their diet. How much fiber do they have there? Is it necessary to increase that fiber intake or not? Again, I would strongly suggest that this gets left to the medical professionals to check out. You're going to have low energy because carbs are your energy. And therefore, a no-carb diet may lead to low energy and fatigue. Again, I will liken us to a car. How far will you get when your car's fuel tank is full? Especially if you're accelerating heavily a lot of the time. And how far will you get if you only have a very small amount of fuel in your tank? So your tank is like a quarter of a tank full. Do you think you're going to get from Durban to Bloemfontein on that? Nope. So you could if you crawled along at about 10 k's an hour, but if you drove normally, you're not going to do that. Whereas with a full tank, you will. The difference between no carb and full carb. So you're going to have insufficient nutrients. A no-carb diet may not provide enough vitamins and minerals, such as potassium, B vitamins, and vitamin C, which are abundant in your fruits, vegetables, and other plant foods. Additionally, the increased urination that results from restricting carbs may lead to nutrient deficiencies, such as sodium and potassium over time. So can you survive on a no-carb diet? If you're following a diet that still allows foods very low in net carbs, then you're basically following a variation of the ketogenic diet. And research shows that as long as you're getting all the necessary nutrients, you should be able to remain healthy long term. On the other hand, if you're excluding carbs entirely, the long-term impact isn't as clear. As I said, with this research, it often covers, to get a clear idea, it often covers decades. And we're looking at a term of anything from 10 to 50 to 60 years to see that result, which is why when a lot of research is done, they do it using mice and rats because they have a comparatively short lifespan, so you can see what the long-term results will be in that shorter lifespan. Humans have a much longer lifespan, so it's very difficult to see what's going to happen if I do this now, what's going to happen in 40 years' time. Like, for instance, because Comrades is still fresh in our mind, the 20-year-old runner that has run Comrades now, probably, yeah, he'll be a bit stiff, but he's not going to feel any effects. But the 80 and 90-year-old runners, or should I say, let's be a little bit more realistic, the ones who've been running since they were in their 20s and they are now in their 60s, have a chat to them. Find out how they're feeling. I'll give an example. Bruce Fordyce. He is famous for having won the Comrades for 10 times or 10 years in a row. I'm under correction on that one, but as far as I know, it was 10 years in a row. There's no way that he's winning the Comrades at the moment. If you ask him how is he doing, he will tell you what has happened to his body over the years. But that wasn't showing after his first comrades, or his second, or his third, or his fourth. But if you talk to him now, a good probably 15, 20 years after the last time he won a comrades, there's no way he's going to be winning it anytime soon. So the winners of the comrades now, check them out 20 to 30 years down the line. They're not going to be quite the same. Their body will have taken huge strain. So the same as eating. If you restrict your carbs now, you're not going to see the effects right now. But what's going to happen in a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line? That's when you're going to see the results of what has happened now, which is why it is so essential for people who are wanting to live a long, healthy life is you need a good foundation diet. So you start off as a baby, because by the time you get to the 80 to 90, your health will have benefited from what happened as a child. Research suggests that eating only animal proteins, for example, causes few negative side effects, though some people did develop higher LDL or low-density lipoproteins, otherwise known as your bad cholesterol levels. But in the greater scheme of things, probably not all that bad. After all, we all have to die someday. So excluding carbs doesn't necessarily mean excluding all plant foods. However, the research on this subject is rather limited. Another 2020 study only examined whether it is possible to survive by only eating animal proteins. And I do know of some people who do just that. They literally only eat meat, 3 meals a day, and even snack on it if necessary. There is not one bit of food, fruit, vegetable, or anything else that crosses their lips. They live entirely on meat. The authors concluded that your calcium may become compromised over time, amongst other possible adverse effects, if you only eat the animal proteins, because you're not going to get sufficient calcium from that. In short, you are likely to survive without carbs in the sense that you won't starve to death, but it's unclear what the long-term health consequences might be. As the no-carb diet is highly restrictive, very high in fat, and not well researched for safety, it's not appropriate for those with eating disorders, children, cholesterol hyperresponders, and pregnant or nursing people. Unless, of course, you're possibly an Inuit or Eskimo. Due to a lack of sufficient research, it's a good idea to consult with your doctor and to be monitored by a healthcare professional as long as you are excluding carbs from your diet. So what should you eat on a no-carb diet? Foods that are typically allowed on this sort of diet include meat and low-carb animal products such as chicken, beef, turkey, lamb, venison, bison, pork, and bison would be venison too, just by the way, eggs, butter, lard, and cheese. Seafood, things like salmon, tilapia, cod, shrimp, sardines, herring, and crab. Seasonings should include herbs and spices. And I must say, when I cook, I generally don't use salt or pepper. I only use herbs and spices. Now, your zero-calorie beverages are also okay. Things like water, black coffee, and plain tea. Nuts and seeds, those that are low in net carbs, things like almonds, walnuts, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, pistachios, and cashews. Non-starchy vegetables, those again, low in net carbs, things like broccoli, zucchini, bell peppers, cauliflower, leafy greens, rutabaga, turnips, Brussels sprouts, asparagus, and mushrooms. Your high-fat fruits such as coconut and avo. And what should you avoid eating on a no-carb diet? This includes things like grains, such as your rice, your farro, barley, quinoa, wheat, bread, pasta. Your sweets and baked goods, so all the nice lasting stuff. the cakes, the cookies, candies, sodas, sugary drinks. Fruits such as apples, oranges, bananas, berries, kiwi, and pears. Starchy vegetables such as peas, corn, squash, and potatoes. Beans and legumes such as black beans, kidney beans, chickpeas, and lentils should all be avoided. Dairy, your milk, and your yogurt. Condiments with added sugar, such as your ketchup, your barbecue sauce, your salad dressings. And if you ever looked at condiments, in most cases, the first and main ingredient is sugar. Alcohol, things like beer, wine, liquor, and your sugary mixed drinks. So the bottom line is a no-carb diet eliminates almost all carbs and encourages high intakes of fat and protein. It may boost weight loss, heart health, and blood sugar control, yet it's unnecessary to cut all carbs to experience these benefits. Again, low carb is better than no carb. Plus, this diet may reduce your energy levels and increase your risk of nutrient deficiencies. So a lot of people go on these very restrictive diets, but they don't enjoy it because they've got no energy, they're constantly hungry, their body's craving for nutrients, which it should be getting from food, but now suddenly you're starving and it's not getting it. And that is why those sort of diets seldom work, because as soon as they hit their goal weight, suddenly they fall off the wagon and they gorge themselves straight back on the high carb. And it's that ends up with that yo-yo effect. So instead, aim to eat a balanced diet with a variety of foods. And that is the end of my presentation. So in all things, balance is key. Elimination, unless medically indicated, is not a good idea. Right, does anybody have any questions or comments before I stop the recording?